And good evening from San Antonio, Texas. My name is Matt Scherer. I am one of the co-founders of the Military Transition Mastermind. I'm also the person that puts on these every other week webinars. And tonight, I feel very fortunate to have my good friend Kitty Meyers, who I consider the Dean of Resume Writers in South Texas. And just a couple ground rules. First of all, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and I'll be watching for it, or you can use the chat feature and I'll be watching for questions. And as needed, I will interject into Kitty's presentation to ask those questions at the end. If you have any specific questions, we'll do that at the end as well. Again, we thank you for joining us from wherever you are. So without further ado, Kitty Meyers.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am honored to be able to join with y'all. Resume writing is 25 years as the Director of Human Resources, and then the counseling I've done since I've retired. I've seen a few resumes, and so the thought is that I'll be able to hopefully guide you with some ideas and we can take it from there. Caveat that I always put out here now is that resumes are just part of your toolbox that you need for a successful career transition. What you're doing is creating a conversation piece, something that will initiate a call so that you get a phone interview, a telephone interview, a virtual interview, whatever kind of interview, so that this is like a teaser to excite you to go for that conversation. So we're going to talk about why resumes are important, the processes, the different types, how to build it, and then what not to include.
Can I ask a question here, Kitty?
Sure.
You talk about the preparation process. What do you think is the typical preparation process for someone who's in the military is making a transition?
Well, if you
are we going to cover that?
Yeah, we're going to cover that.
Okay.
So I just skipped to the slide there. Let me see if I can go back.
No, that's okay. We're just going to cover it. I don't want to take you off your game.
No. But the whole idea is that let me just do this. Because this is important, because resumes are your branding tool. And this is what's really going to tell folks about your experiences, your knowledge, the things that you know, and your accomplishments especially, and how they fit into the position and the company that you're applying for. This is a glimpse at what the personal characteristics are, so that they can get an idea of how you are going to be able to fit their needs. If you have taken a marketing class and you know, the thing is that when you've got a product, you're gearing that product to the customer. In this case, your customer is the recipient of your resume. They've told you in the job description what they're looking for, and your goal is to define these particular characteristics, experience, accomplishments, the KSAs, how that fits their need and fills their need. And if you do that successfully, that's going to invite those next conversations. So as you go through and prep for writing your resume, and what I always recommend is that folks go ahead and they build a master resume. And this will become a lifelong thing, because you never know when an experience, an accomplishment that you've made is going to be needed in the future. So if you just create this master format, then all you have to do when it comes time to apply for a job is to, thank goodness for the wonderful computers now and the processing and everything, is save that document to that particular job description and then customize it, tailor it to what they're looking for in the job description. How you do this is you've got all your past personnel records. You've got all your OBRs, OPRs, whatever your performance reviews are called. You've got any other employment opportunities that you've had where you've got employment documents for performance reviews, things like that. Take a skills inventory. Think about all the different skills that you have and just start data dumping those onto this master resume so that you'll be able to pull out and mix and match the ones that they're looking for in the resume. I talked to a young man this morning and we went through and talked about his accomplishments, and we had the job description right next to me. And so we would go through and I'd say, now, did you think of this? Oh no. Did you think of this? Oh no. And so it's how to mix and match. And he was a Marine infantryman, again, retiring major, so lots of experience, prior military as well as officer type. And but he was applying for a job with Lockheed that had to do with airplanes. And so the thing was, he still has experiences that would match with what they were looking for in the resume, in the job description. So it's just a matter of taking those thoughts and reformatting them. But by taking all of these documents and putting them together on a master, you can just then quickly cut and paste from there to match with what they're looking for.
I've heard you say a lot of times when you're building that master resume that you want to tailor for the job. Are we going to talk about that later on, or do you want to?
Sure. Yep. Okay. So as we build your profile, again, you're looking at all the different skill sets, the security clearance, communication skills. These are key. And what you want to do is, again, with all of these things, is to put down specifics. And because one of the things that I describe is people will put down leadership. Well, every company is looking for leadership, no matter where you are in the organizational structure. But what are some of the key pieces within leadership that they're looking for? Conflict resolution, performance management, and you can go on and on and on that breaks down the leadership. The way I describe it to my Air Force folks is that you're not a satellite, you're not the SR-71, you're not flying way high in the sky. You're the A-10, you're scooting the ground and you have a target in sight. That target is the job that you're looking for. And so that's how you narrow things down to match to that. But you put relevant education and training. What's most important nowadays are the certifications and the licenses. So whatever you have there, that's key to highlight. One young man I talked to was finishing up a PMP for project management. Did he have it listed on his resume? No. And I'm going, why not? When are you taking the test? Well, in 3 weeks. There's no reason why you can't put PMP certification and put anticipated in September of 2020. That gives the folks that are receiving that resume an idea of when it is going to happen.
Can I say something here, Kitty?
Sure.
I think that having that kind of statement tells people that you're forward thinking and you're doing everything you can to be a better candidate as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And nowadays, certifications are more golden than education in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
They show the technical expertise. And again, you're looking for accomplishments, all the things you've done, and especially we're looking for metrics and results. Focus on the job and tell them what you've done that meets what they're looking for. So there are 3 basic formats, the chronological, the functional, and the combination. Combination can also be called hybrid because it's combining the key features of the chronological and the functional there. So here's just a quick example of a chronological resume. You're basically focusing on the listing by the first, and you're going back basically about 10 years or so with things that you've done. On your summary, we'll talk about the individual pieces of these in the middle. I wanted to show you the different formats. This is the one that most HR folks look at because it's the easiest for them to read, because they're looking at what you've done lately, and then they back it up. Now there may come a time where you've done something like that knocks the socks off of somebody, and it's applicable to the particular job that you did 10 years past. You can mention that in the summary when we get to it, but you would say, you know, that you're familiar with Lean, or you've used Lean Six Sigma, something to those effects as you go along. So it's, again, putting everything there. The education and the certifications are important, and then as well as the association and volunteer activities. Here are some of the pieces that talk about the pros and cons of the chronological format. This is, again, the most logical way of doing it. It's understood by most employers, and it highlights, especially if you progress within one company, the you know, how you've grown in successive positions. It does emphasize a gap in employment. So say you got off active duty in 2017, 2018, something like that, and you've got a 2-year gap. That's going to be noticeable, and you're going to need, if you want to use this type of format, then you're going to need to put something in there that says what you've accomplished in that 2-year period.
So can I ask another question here? So a person with this kind of gap, maybe that 2-year gap is because they were going back to school or getting a degree. That's where you put that degree in there to explain the gap?
Absolutely. And instead of having the professional experience and then the education, you may want to flip it. Put the education first to highlight that you're working on the degree, and then you've got the professional experience down there.
I have one more question as well. It says conservative fields. What do you mean by conservative fields?
A conservative field would be something like something that's more traditional, something that, so say you've been in manufacturing, and well, and the military is another conservative field, because, you know, if you went from one position to the next, to the next, to the next, and you moved on up within, you know, within your chain of command. Okay. So it shows successive levels of performance and responsibility.
Thank you.
If you were to put, you know, to be quite honest, for me, you know, I was a director of human resources for four different properties, and I did, you know, basically the same job title for each of those 4. You know, if I were to use this chronological, it'd be listing the same things. I would use more of a combination or functional in my case, because then I could highlight the things that I did as special accomplishments and then just list the positions below.
Got it. Thank you.
See, this is the functional, and this is, again, what mine is more of a my personal resume is more of a combination, but again, you've got the summary, you've got the key skills matching to what the job description says. But here I highlight all sorts of accomplishments, focusing on the results and using metrics and numbers. Then I list my professional experience, the education and certifications, and then the volunteer activities. So you can see I'm highlighting accomplishments and things that I've done. Folks who don't like this particular resume are going to immediately jump down to the professional experience and go, well, when did she do that? But again, I'm highlighting the different things that I've done. It highlights my skills and my work experiences. It does hide any gaps in employment, and it de-emphasizes the lack of related work experience. So say if you were I talked to one guy, and he spent his entire career and made it to a command level as the head cop for that particular command in the Air Force. The last thing he wanted to do when we talked was to go into the security business of some sort. So then again, it's like, okay, let's talk about what you'd like to do and how can we highlight the skills that you've got, that you've gained to what they're looking for in the job description. So this was more appropriate functional resume for him.
Do you think that, and I think I know the person you talked to, but do you think that a functional resume may work better with a LinkedIn profile that's fully filled out, because then people can see when and where you serve in those positions?
Well, this is a good segue to one sort of comment, Matt, and that is that the first thing we're going to do when we'll have a whole bunch of resumes that we're going to climb through as an HR director or whoever the recruiter is, and we're just basically going to be dealing cards. Most folks give maybe 10-15 seconds per resume. That's not a lot of time. Count out 10 seconds and you're going to go, how can anybody notice what's happening in that 10 seconds? So we're going to go through and narrow it down to maybe 15, 20 that we really want to focus on. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to Google, and what's the first thing that pops up when you Google somebody?
Let me guess, LinkedIn.
You got it. You got it. So that's why I call the LinkedIn the resume on steroids, because again, it's not targeting to that specific job. That resume is the teaser to get you to go to the next step, which is LinkedIn. So if you focus on creating a resume that's a successful teaser, then they will then pull up the LinkedIn and see a lot more information there.
So what you're saying is that LinkedIn is like an appetizer to the main meal, and then the recruiter takes those 10 resumes and they put it into the pile they want to look up more about that person, and that's when they go to their LinkedIn profile to see the rest of their story.
Absolutely, and that helps again narrow down. The next step would be hopefully probably would be a telephone screening.
Yeah.
That they do to say, okay, now of these 10, what are some detractors that I can pull somebody out so I'm down to 5 that I'm going to refer to the hiring manager.
I appreciate that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So again, you've got, you've got these pieces here. The last one is the combination, which is the one that really, to me, fits a lot of the bills, because you're combining the two. You've got your summary again, the key skills, because again, that's going to be my first thing. If the key skills, when I'm looking at it, are going to be matching what I'm looking for in the job description, then I'm going to look at accomplishments and say, okay, fine, this is a good one. But you've got key ones right here, the highlighting accomplishments. Then under each job that you have listed, you also have some accomplishments. Then you've got your education and certifications, and then your associations and volunteer activities.
So let me ask you a question about professional associations and volunteer activities.
Matt, we're going to get to that in a bit.
Okay, just had to ask, just kind of, thank you.
Again, here's this highlights what's relevant, showcases skills. It does, it provides, you really need to make sure it is well structured, because then makes it easier to read. That's the key thing. You want to make the resumes relate to the job, and then the keys, and easy to read. If you accomplish that, then you created a successful resume. The best way to find out these pieces is to do your research, do your networking, and talk to folks within that company. Find out what they're looking for, and find out how they're looking for things process, talk to the folks in HR, get a hold of that job description. If for some reason they don't have a job description, that could be a red flag. I interviewed with one company and I was referred by an internal candidate with a job that really seemed to match what I was looking to do. We talked, had the interview, come to find out that the guy I was interviewing with was on his way out the door. They didn't have a job description, but they said, oh, we're working on it, we're working on it. I lasted with that company for 4 months because it just was not a match. They never had a clue as to what they wanted me to do in that job. So here are your different sections. And we're going to go through each one of these to give you more insight into them. But again, just as you saw on the each of the 3 different formats, you've got each of the different pieces. Now I do have, when we talk to objective and summary, we're going to talk a little bit about why it is optional in some cases, in others it's not. One thing that you do, let me caveat this with this. If you talk to a good friend of mine, Thomas, you may have seen something from him, David Patrick from our MOA chapter here in San Antonio. David always goes, if you talk to 5 people on resumes, you're going to get 5 different answers.
Yeah.
And the thing that I really would like to impress upon you is, whose resume is it? It's each of your resumes, and you can't have somebody else really write it, because what you're trying to do is to tell your story. And if I were to write it, I'm telling my story, or I'm interpreting your story, and I could be missing key pieces. So as you talk to different folks about resumes, take the bits and pieces out of each of the conversations and fit it to what you want. How do you want to tell your story? Because then you'll be able to explain those stories when you get into the interview process. So for the contact information, key pieces, your name, your phone number, your professional email address, and your LinkedIn address are critical. If you put your, the city that you're in or the one you want to locate to, that's a good thing. But again, the 4 key pieces that I always stress are these right here. Who am I, and how can you get a hold of me so that we can talk? You want to make it legible and easy to read. I received one resume a long while back for this particular one, where he had the contact information buried in the footer of the document, and it was in 6 points. Well, you needed a bloody magnifying glass to try to read that sucker and get a hold of him. So you want to have it right up front and nice and easy to read. Make sure they know how to get a hold of you. And what I recommend is put the header, put this information in the header so that it will show on all the pages, and you won't have to worry about reformatting every time you go in and adjust the resume. It just makes it so much easier for you and for me as the reader to be able to find you.
So I've got a couple questions here. One very relevant to this. What do you mean by a professional email?
Professional email. A professional, I would strongly recommend that you create an email specifically for your job search so that you can easily manage your resume, all of the discussions and everything versus having it combined with everything else.
Yeah.
So that's why I have 2 resumes, my professional resume or my professional email address and my personal email address.
So a bad example of a professional email would be bigdaddy25@hotmail.com, something like that.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. If you look at Hotmail, they're going to go ancient. AOL is ancient. Yahoo has been hacked so many times that that's not a favorite. Gmail is the preferred right now, or the most recognized. Other questions?
Another question. Javon says, are the slides going to be available after the call?
I can make them available to you.
I
Well,
have
actually,
two,
Matt,
so
you have them. Go for it.
I will make them available to anybody that requests.
Okay. And Matt, I'll also send you. I think I've sent you my white paper. If you want to provide them the white paper as well.
That'd be great, Kitty.
Yeah, I think you have it. If not, let me know and I'll send it to you.
Let me check with you in the morning on that, okay?
Huh?
I'll check with you in the morning on that, okay?
That's good.
Thanks.
Okay. For the objective and the summary statement, this is something that you are highlighting the key things that make you stand out from everybody else and why somebody should take a look at you. It needs to be short. It needs to be strong. And you want to really put in there keywords that people look at. You've got well-educated, extensive experience. I talk about the different venues that I worked in, demonstrated success in developing cultures and diversity and focusing on organizational improvement and customer service. And then because of the things I'm doing now, advocating in the military community. So when you take a look at that, it's like, okay, this is somebody that brings a variety of experiences and a depth of knowledge that can be an asset to my community. And she's demonstrated the ability to work in different cultures. With a hospitality background, that was key. But again, this is talking about my personal character strength. So again, these are the pieces that you do. You don't necessarily go in and need to talk about, your military career. As soon as they look at your people in there say, start off with, I'm a Marine officer that did this, this, and this. And then, so you got I am. You don't need that language. Look for succinctness and specificity in what you're doing. Marine officer, his only job out of graduating from the Citadel was as a Marine. They're going to figure that out as soon as they look at the rest of the resume. So again, really make this a powerful statement as to who you are and how that applies to the job description. Key skills. This is, again, the teaser that's going to draw people's interest because it's matching your skills and abilities to what they're looking for in the job description. And I always recommend not to, to make sure that the words match as close as possible. I put don't bullet, and that's because we use applicant tracking systems and scanning so much nowadays in managing resumes that we get that I've heard that if you bullet those particular points in this area, that sometimes the system does not recognize the keywords and you'll automatically be kicked out. Now, I may update this as of Friday because I'm attending a webinar on applicant tracking systems, and so I may come back and say it's okay to bullet point. But for right now, my recommendation is not to bullet point. But you're highlighting one or two words, and again, you want to make sure that they are, not the leadership, but staff development, performance management, conflict resolution. Public speaking, if you have all the different programming in there, security clearances, have that right up front if you're looking for a job with security clearance. backtracking to the header. If you have certifications where you've got, like I have the 2 certifications for human resources. On my contact information, you're going to see those particular pieces. So put PMP up there, but then also emphasize things down here. You really want to highlight what they're looking for so that you can go through. If you've got contract management and they list contract management, put it down there. If you've got, something in the logistics area that can be broken down, then you list those particular things, whether it's supply chain management or inventory control or things like that. Those are all big pieces of what they're looking for, and that job description is going to tell you what to include. Now, selected accomplishments are the beginning of the key to the process. You want to go through and talk about things that you've actually accomplished. You want to highlight what they are. And the biggest thing is you really want to show results. And if you take a look at the statement down here that I wrote, this is in my resume, my master resume. Developed and administered employee engagement surveys. Results increased, employee engagement increased from 85% to 95% in a 3-year period. In human resources, helping create an engaged culture reflects on the bottom line. Let's face it. If somebody's engaged, they're going to perform better. Your organization is going to perform better. Your customers are going to be happier, and you're going to be able to really excel in your business. This was a new organization. I created the survey, and this is what I put. But the follow-on questions that are going to come about is, Kitty, how did you do this? Tell me the story behind this. So I can say it's a new organization. We were just, we've been in operation for a couple of years, and we were still not clicking as a team. So we created the survey, did the initial results, took those initial results, broke folks down into teams, had focus groups, figured out plans and actions on how to improve the process, and then the processes or whatever the issues were. And then 3 years later, took the results again, took the survey again, and we're able to say, hey, look, we have improved this much in how we did and how things are going. Success. That's what people want, is what have you done that's been successful? What are you proud of? This is something I'm proud of. So that's why I include it. But you're talking about a benefit to the organization, an achievement, an acquired skill. It may be that you don't have metrics specifically that can go to it, but you can identify a qualitative result. That's just as beneficial to help, but you're explaining benefits of having, of what you did. For those of you who write publications, that's another big thing, because especially if they're related to the job, that again lends to your credibility and your credentials to what they're looking for. Professional work experience. This is where you go through and you talk about, again, the job title. And when we say translated, you want to make it so it's understandable to the recipient. So you want to make sure that you can, as close as possible, and sometimes it's you feel like you're pulling something out of left field. Don't be intimidated by that.
So I got a couple more questions, Kitty.
Uh-huh.
Reggie says, what are your thoughts on dating yourself by saying you have upwards of 20 years of experience?
why date yourself? Why put that out there? Is that really relevant? You know, you can put an experienced, you can put, you know, if you're in the military, that 20 years, you were doing so many different things within those 20 years.
Yeah.
That I would leave off the 20 years. Talk about how experienced you are. Talk about highly experienced professional, you know, something to that effect. But you don't need to emphasize the 20 years.
So I have another question, just as I have a question, but I'll let James ask the question. So James, please ask your question.
Thank you, sir. So back when you were talking on the last slide about highlighting our results. Now, I'm retired Air Force as well, and you know as well as I do, we get a lot of things on our OPRs and stuff that says, you know, the commander was ecstatic. You know, they were doing flips. How do I quantitate that in a resume when I don't necessarily have saved $5 million or, I mean, and you have to say, you know, we did kind of make up a lot of things, you know, that we improved 40%. Well, I don't have any actual data to back that up.
Nobody's going to ask for the specific, nobody's going to ask for you to prove that you increased by 40%. And, you know, so you may not have the actual data to back that up, but that doesn't mean you can't say improve by 40%. You know, it's one of these things. They're not going to care if the commander did backflips.
Right.
They want to know what you did that really impacted the process. And so if you can go through and you can say that you improved, you know, by approximately 40%, that's going to be fine.
All right, thank you.
Does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay, professional work experience. This is where you go through and you talk about the job title. One thing that I would recommend is, so say you have 20 years of experience in the Air Force. I would list I would just go United States Air Force. You know, they already know your employer. You've been in multiple locations, and I would even go say 19. So it'd be 2000 to 2020. You don't necessarily need to put the month. You were in multiple, you could just, you would go U.S. Air Force multiple locations. So people would know that you moved around different locations. I think I've only heard of one individual who spent 18 of his 20 years in one location, and that was a doc that's over here at BAMC. And he just happened to luck out. His wife is a good friend of mine, and she goes, I couldn't believe it. I was able to build my business in one location and not have to go skipping around. But, you know, the rest of us, we had how many locations in our career? So you can go from there. But the key piece is that you're going to put you're going to highlight information. And I always put it in what I call a CAR format. So you're looking for the circumstance, the action, and then you're going to highlight the results, and you're going to use power verbs, just like you saw in my statement before, using power verbs. What did I do? How did I do it? Just a snippet of how I did it and what were the results, and use as many metrics or qualitative statements as you can to say, hey, I am somebody you want to talk to because this is what I did. And you're going to list the most recent backwards 10 years. You don't have to go past that much, much beyond that, because again, they're looking for what you've done that's relevant to what they're doing and most current. And again, you can see this is kind of updated. It's 2015. I haven't found this any more recent than this, but again, if you go through and you focus on, you know, the last 10 years, that's the most key. Education, training, and certifications. Again, this is key. A lot of times, military folks like to list all of their military training. And God bless you, that was very appropriate for the military, but how applicable is it going to be on the civilian side? You know, some of these things, you know, if you went through an armored management course, great for the Army, but not necessarily for the civilian side, unless it's a job that's working for a company that makes tanks. So you need to focus on, again, what is relevant to the organization. So you include the name, the university. One thing is that I can point out is it's not a master's degree in science, it's a master of science. So you want to make sure that you just, that little S can sometimes trip people up. So focus on that. Again, certifications are huge. And if there is an expiration date, you need to make sure that you list when it's expiring. And that just shows you're really focusing on maintaining the currency for that particular certification. Those of you with tech background, you know the impact of certifications on what you're trying to do, because you've got one for each different type of system, whether it's Java or you know, the CISOP or whatever it is, you know, all those different acronyms that are hugely important, because those are the things that those folks are looking for the expertise on. If you don't have that, then you're going to run into, you're going to have to show what you've got that might equate to what they're looking for. And this is where I do a plug for those of you who are still on active duty. If you check with your local transition folks, you can find out about Onward to Opportunity, which is a marvelous program that is connected with the University of Syracuse. And through this program, y'all can get these certifications for free. It's marvelous what they've done, what they've created, and they really help you out. They'll connect you with folks. If you're, say, in, you know, if you're in San Antonio and you've been out for more than 6 months, if you connect with a nonprofit that we have here in town called Project Quest, they offer through the Open Cloud Academy, which is sponsored by Rackspace, certifications there. So even if you don't have a certification that you need based upon what you see in the job descriptions as you're doing your research, there may be opportunities out there where you can either get it for free or you can connect with somebody where you can use your GI Bill to get those certifications. That's one of the things that as you're going through this transition process, it's really, really important to do your research and analyze what the folks that are looking for in the job that you're looking for, and then try to meet those expectations. Associations and volunteer activities. This is probably an area that most people overlook. You want to focus on things that are, you know, professional associations. If you're interested in IT cyber stuff, there's the Armed Forces Certification and Electronic Association, and there are chapters for that all over the place. And the key thing about that is this is a networking opportunity, because networking is how you're going to get a job, because you're out there meeting folks, letting them know that you're looking for a job, and you're building a support system to help you find that job. But that's why these professional memberships are really, really key, really, really important. Another thing is if you're doing volunteer activities, you know, this is where folks are going, well, why would you want to listen to that? Well, let me put it this way. Boy Scouts, huge network, right? You put in there that you volunteer with the Boy Scouts, they're going to come up and say, hey, I was a Boy Scout or I was a Scout. And it's a good connector along the way because you've got that alumni network that you can really connect with. Another great connector is alumni associations from your school. I went to the University of Maryland College Park. It is huge. But I got my master's degree with Webster. That's a more related, you know, it's not as huge as, you know, okay, you can say I went to the University of Maryland. Well, there are so many campuses, there are so many, you know, there's the global campus that so many folks are there, but Webster's not as broad as that. So you know, you can check through there, but you never know where a contact's going to come out. And so if you can, you know, if it's related to the job and, you know, it may be something that you want to include in this particular piece of the resume. Again, you're trying to create interest in the job and how you relate to that particular job. Get the interest of the recruiter so that they'll really connect with you. Really, really recommend no more than 2 pages. This is again where your research comes in. Somebody's going to come along and say, well, I only want a 1-page resume. Fine. If you want a 1-page, then you try to smush what you want into 1 page. But most folks are okay with 2 pages. If you use more than 2 pages, I've gotten resumes that are like 5 and 6 pages. I didn't even look at them. I'll be quite honest. If you can't say succinctly what you want in 2 pages, then how are you going to be in performance level when you get on the job? Are you going to say, you know, spend extra words doing the same thing? It gives you an idea. The tagline I've got here, average amount of time spent reviewing, 10 to 15 seconds. That's all we've got when we're multitasking as it is. Looking, you know, whether it's multitasking different openings, we've got a stack of openings to fill, all the different things that we're doing. What to omit. This is, these are all really based upon either security, where you've got your social security number, or personal data that could involve discriminatory things. This list basically came from, you know, what we recommend not to get involved with the EEOC. References you don't need because you're going to have those on a separate piece of paper. They're going to be included in the application when you're applying online. You're going to provide that to the reviewer when they ask for them. So you're going to have those on a separate piece of paper. You don't need them on the initial resume. One of the side notes on references that I always recommend is make sure that you've got somebody on there who's actually going to give you a good reference. One individual applied for a position at one of the hotels that I worked at. He did not do that. He just put his supervisor as a reference. We called the supervisor, and the supervisor goes, excuse me, he's applying for a job with y'all? I didn't know that. Young man got fired from his old job before he had a new job lined up. So you want to make sure that your references are somebody you would give you a good reference. Marital status, you don't need to include. I don't know whether we have any spouses on the line. I talk to a lot of military spouses who are constantly going through the transition process. God bless them. And they say, should I put military spouse? in the resume. And it's like, why? You're telling somebody your marital status. That's not related to how you're going to be able to do the job. So no, don't put military spouse there. Some of these other things, you know, religious affiliation, political views, those are all things that are hot potatoes, especially nowadays. So you want to avoid stuff like that. You don't, you know, if you're doing a volunteer activity with children and you want to include that, that's fine there, but you don't list children and ages that go along with that. And then also pictures. Pictures don't scan well. Pictures may not come over through the resume. And also pictures, we'll see those when we look at the LinkedIn. But for the resume, to be quite honest, before the real advent, you know, and I'm dating myself because I've been doing this for so long, is that if I got a resume with a picture on it, the first thing I did was cut out the picture, because then I photocopy the resume and I send it to the managers, and I don't want the managers to have that picture on there. That would get me in deep trouble with the EEOC or the OFCCP if they were ever to come in and audit me. Again, personal information, social security number, age, you know, all those things there, you really don't need to include, because those are things that in some way or another could be involved with privacy issues with the social security number or discriminatory pieces as well. Cover letter or cover email. This is an important piece because this is really an introductory specific to that job as to why you should be interviewed. This is to introduce yourself, create your own letterhead, include your name and your contact information, again, always very, very important, and then do a standard letter format, date, address, dear so-and-so, body, closure. Now, I put here, use specific name as possible. This is where your research comes in. You could find out who you are interviewing with and include that there. Or if you're dealing strictly with a recruiter, you're gonna put the recruiter's name in there, because you try to make it as personal as possible to the individual so that they know, hey, I've done my research and this is where I am. The body of the letter, usually you're only talking 3-4 paragraphs. You don't want to go over 1 page on this. If you're doing an email, that's the piece that goes into the body of the email. And in a lot of cases, that can be sufficient for a cover letter. It's going to be up to you as to how you send it to the individual. But it can be, email, the body can be the same. First paragraph is going to say, you know, what you're applying for, where you heard about it, and some of the basic information about, you know, just as an introductory piece. You're going to talk about in the letter, in this cover letter or email, you know, what makes you stand out from everybody else for that particular job. This is your snapshot into what really is the kicker. Then you're going to put in the last paragraph, thank you for reviewing this. Thank you for reviewing my resume. I look forward to talking to you, and give a reasonable time frame as to when you're going to be able to, you know, when you're going to follow up with them about where they are in the process. Now, hopefully, you're going to be able to hear something in a reasonable time. Don't necessarily bank on that process. They may, if a lot of times what they'll do is they will not even look at the resumes. They'll just start creating a stack of resumes until they get to, say, a 2-week time frame or a 3-week time frame, and then they'll go through them all. So you may just get the comeback, well, we haven't started reviewing these, we'll be in touch. So it's always important that you do that. And then as far as your closure, you're going to put, you know, respectfully, very respectfully, sincerely, and then again, your closing piece with your signature. Very professional letter, very professional format. Again, I go through all these pieces here, 2 or 3 paragraphs, thanking for the resume, when will you contact, and then the signature.
Kitty, I got another question.
What?
It's from Jennifer Santiago. She says, what do HR folks look for when they select you for an internship and then a possible job in their company?
Okay, you're coming through garble. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. What do HR folks look for when they select you for an internship and then a possible job in that company? There's more to this question. I'm assuming it is treated the same way as if you're directly applying for a position.
Absolutely. If they've opened a position for an intern, again, there should be a job description out there for that job, and they're going to tell you the different pieces that they're looking for to include on the resume. You're focusing on, you know, it may be an internship in an area that you're not, that's going to be new to you. So again, you're going to explain why you want that particular internship. What are you bringing to the table that they need that really helps identify for them how you can be beneficial? Because internships, for the, you know, for the most part, they are looking, that's a trial period. They're looking for somebody to come in as an intern as a possible person to hire into a full-time employment position. And this is your opportunity to get in there. It's also a training time for you. Is this something that I really want to do? Is this a company that I really want to work for? And if you find out that it's not, then that's an okay thing. I'd work out the internship and then just say thank you very much and move on. Don't quit midpoint, but, you know, work through the internship, because again, you were only hired for a defined period for that internship. Okay, additional thoughts. Special paper is not required. Don't go out to any Office Depot and buy this fancy paper that is, if it were like me, when I get stuff like that, the first thing I do is run it through the copy machine, and the odds are I jam the copy machine because it's special paper that the copy machine doesn't like. You must realize that most of us do make photocopies that we hand out to the managers, that it's not one of these things, you know, so you just want some regular paper. If you are emailing it, your resume, they'll never see that paper. If it's downloaded onto an applicant tracking system, they're never going to see that paper. And if you're like me, when I was, you know, I did buy some special paper that I was going to use for some formal letters that I was writing for something, another project. That box of paper is still sitting in my closet. I just have never used it. So don't waste your money there. Another area don't waste your money on is paying for a resume service. There are so many of us out there who are willing to sit down and talk to you and provide you this information that I'm talking to you about now, and sending you the white papers and providing you with this slide deck. And again, sitting down and talking to you one-on-one, that you don't need to pay for somebody to do it for you. Again, the bottom line is, whose resume is it? It's your resume. It's your story. Be proud of that story. You're the one who's got to sell it. You want to update and tailor for each job description. If you're applying to USAA for a couple different jobs, they're going to have a job description for each one of those jobs. So you want to make sure that you tailor the resume to each of those jobs. Different managers are going to look for it. If you send a generic resume, it will fit one, but it won't fit into the next job. So again, you're tailoring for each position. Again, a lot of people use a ghostwriter, but it's your resume. And then the one thing that just can really set me off if I'm reviewing a bunch of resumes is somebody just copied and pasted the job description that I wrote. I wrote the job description. I don't need to see it again on a resume. You want to put there what you've done that matches what I'm looking for on the resume or on the job description. Not just saying, you know, things that I wrote. Because this is your marketing tool. This is the piece that is really, really going to sell yourself. Again, think marketing 101. Think of the customer. Do your research about that customer. Tailor the resume to that job description and to the customer so that that will excite them to want to talk to you, to want to pick up the phone and say, okay, I'd like to talk to you about this job XYZ that you're applying for. Are you available right now? Sure. And then you go from there. Questions and answers. Any other questions out there?
This is James again. Earlier when you were talking about the LinkedIn, I kind of use my LinkedIn account as my master resume. And so I try to make sure that all my updates are there, because then I can actually just download my whole profile and write into Microsoft Word. And so as I need to tailor my resume, what have you like that, I can cut and paste over into my resume. Is that something, or should we keep each of the blocks in there with just 2 or 3 bullets, or if I've got 7 bullets or whatever per job, is that okay on LinkedIn?
Well, Matt's shaking his head. I'm going to let Matt take the first whack at that question.
So LinkedIn is not your resume. I believe in the master resume like she's talking about. I'm a very big believer in the first person format on a LinkedIn profile, okay? And so they're 2 totally different animals. I would be happy to talk to you about it anytime, James. I know you're seeing the world. I just was checking out your profile, but it really is a chance to kind of put in all the details you don't get in your resume. You're limited to 2 pages in a resume, and a LinkedIn profile. I'm working with some people. We're taking all 2,000 characters for each experience section, and that's not including the pictures and the other things that describe what they did. So, no. But again, that's Matt's viewpoint of what you should do with your LinkedIn profile. It's yours, like she says.
And then I would like to add that if you do this separate master resume and you're adding pieces into there all along, and this is going to be a living document. So even as you move on to your new career and you do things, you know, if you're retiring after 20 years, that means you're 40, 45-ish type age range. You still have another 20 years at least that you're working. You're going to be adding things onto this master resume. And you're going to be adding skills and certification and education and all sorts of things. Those things, you're not going to download everything there onto the LinkedIn. You're not going to download everything there into a resume for a specific job. But you've got this listing, this biography of stuff that you've got in this master resume that you're going to be able to cut and paste as you need for an actual resume.
I got another question here, and I'm going to answer for you. Everybody wants to get the slides, so if you connect with me, if you're not a first-degree connection, please connect with me and say, hey, I was at the presentation. I'd love to get the slides. I'll connect with you, and I'll send you the slides. And those of you, I can see there's 5 or 6 of you that I know from other engagements. Just send me a note. Hey, Matt, I'd love to get the slides, and as soon as I have some time, it should be tomorrow, I will send you those slides. And now I'm going to take a short plug for the Military Transition Roundtable. This is a nonprofit that was formed, and They're the sponsors of tonight's event with Kitty. Our purpose is to put people together in mastermind groups. If you are somewhere in the process of leaving the military, as well as those that, you know, are not happy with what you're doing once you left the military, please give us a call. Contact me at LinkedIn. Again, thank you, everyone. And Kitty, I'm getting a lot of kudos here in the chat as you were presenting. Everybody's very, very happy to have this information. I'm very happy to have this information.
Well, thank you. You do have my contact information. If I can be of assistance, please do not hesitate to drop me a line or give me a call.
So, good night from San Antonio, Texas on the north side. It's been great having you all. I noticed, for example, that Jen had a puppy. I noticed her little puppy with a kind of shame, but it was fun to have you all here. And let us be on the lookout for future events. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.